Merhabalar, ben Şükrü. P2P'nin bu bölümünde çok sevdiğim dostum Daniel ile birlikte olacağız. Daniel kendi 4 çocuğunu evden yetiştirmiş birisi ve bu bölümde evden yetiştirme ve Bitcoin hakkındaki ortak noktaları tartışacağız. Umarım bölüm hoşunuza gidecektir. Hi Daniel.
How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Yes, I'm doing good. So yeah, to inform people, you were the first person that I did a full podcast episode with, and I think it was very valuable because you do these kind of things and you get to talk to people who are not like big in the Bitcoin space but have interesting things to share. But I mean, obviously, everyone has an interesting thing to share. But yeah, it was very kind of you to have me there.
You're very welcome, mate. Very welcome. It's always nice to meet Bitcoiners from all around the world with different backgrounds. I love learning about people's different lives and what's brought them to Bitcoin and what they do in their day-to-day and how that applies and how they can take the knowledge that they've learned from Bitcoin and then apply that to their day-to-day life as well and how that changes their thinking. And in many cases, as you know many people in the space that I do, so many people have managed to apply the knowledge they've learned through studying Bitcoin to release themselves from an existence that they perhaps thought they weren't already 100% committed to. But when Bitcoin taps you on the shoulder and you start learning about sound money and the history of money and human action and all of that good stuff, it's changed so many different people's lives in so many different ways that it's released so much energy into the space, and it's so great to see as this network grows. I get lit up every time I get a chance to speak to Bitcoiners from around the world. So thanks for inviting me on. This is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah. So you probably talk to people from every background and like every experience, like work experience, or with so many different like hobbies and things. And one of the things I want to do is to also show to the Turkish people that Bitcoiners come from every background, like, and they have a lot of different things that they are interested in. And one of the things that you focus on is, for example, homeschooling. And yeah, today I would really like to shine the spotlight on that aspect of your life.
Absolutely. That's a rabbit hole in itself. We call it going down the rabbit hole in the Bitcoin space, but you can go down so many different rabbit holes, right? People have been down the health rabbit hole, or nutrition, or medicine, whatever it is. And when you start really educating yourself about something, you realize the not classical education, the education that you were given, programmed with as a kid going up through school. There's two things that happen. First of all, when you start learning something that you're interested in on your own time, at your own volition, your own choice, you literally can't stop learning about it. You're listening to podcasts, you're reading books, you're reading articles, you are scratching around the deepest, darkest corner of the internet just to find any more information on this certain topic. Pick a topic, whatever it is that you're interested in. And then you suddenly realize, whoa, anything I was ever taught about this before, if anything at all, was really superficial or just wrong. Just completely wrong. And I fell down the homeschool rabbit hole when my wife and I decided that we wanted to take our kids out of school and travel the world with them. And that came about because I had just had enough at work. And this is before I'd even found Bitcoin. I used to work in financial markets. I lived in Singapore for 15 years, originally from London. So I moved from London in 1999 to Singapore, spent 15 years in financial markets, in foreign exchange.
Around the dot-com bubble era.
Right, yes. But that was a weird thing because everybody at that point was watching equities, 99, 2000, 2001, and I was working in foreign exchange. So even the foreign exchange brokers and traders were watching equities because that was the biggest story in town, and that's
Yeah.
how everybody thought they were going to get rich overnight. The classic pump and dump scheme, applied to a whole sector. So I had worked for 15 years in financial markets, in foreign exchange. I brokered deals on currency options between the world's biggest banks and charged the commission for doing that.
So, for example, like the years that you are active on foreign exchange, Turkey had a really big crisis to the Turkish lira. Do you remember like dealing with Turkish lira, or was it just like not
No,
important?
I was. It was definitely one of the lesser traded currencies
Mhm,
in Europe, but because I was based in Asia, my focus was dollar yen,
mhm,
and the euro to yen, and all of the not Chinese, Asian currencies. So
mhm.
the
Like
renminbi,
Malaysia. Yeah.
yeah, Malaysian ringgit, Indonesian rupiah, Hong Kong dollar, Taiwanese dollar. So all of these would change, would trade against the US dollar, obviously,
Mhm.
and that's where we were doing most of our trading. So I do not remember the Turkish lira blow up.
Yeah, I'll tell you a fun fact, by the way. Like a lot of that they call it the Japanese housewives used to invest in Turkish lira a couple of years ago because the yen is like gives a negative interest. Basically, it's deflationary,
Mhm.
and Turkish lira had interest, and it wasn't as bad a couple of years ago. So. Yeah, a lot of Japanese housewives also suffered from Turkish lira in recent years.
You're kidding. So they were exchanging their yen for lira
Yeah,
to try and capture the carry trade, is what we would
yeah,
call that
yeah.
on
The
the
carry
different.
trade.
Right. Okay.
Like
Okay.
4 years, 5 years ago, it was kind of popular amongst the Japanese housewives. They say, but I don't.
Madness.
Yeah, it's
All
great.
right. So
Okay.
yeah, I'd been doing that for 15 years. No, 18 years in total. And I read a book called The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. I wanted to quit my job because that book made me realize I was just a hamster on a wheel, and
Mm-hmm,
I was just a tiny cog in a huge machine, and I
mm-hmm.
was expendable at any point,
Yeah,
literally any point. And I'd seen guys walked off the desk and never come back in my own office, and
yeah,
I turned up some mornings to find out some customers had been removed from their jobs. So once I realized I was that small cog in a huge machine and expendable, I figured, why don't I take this into my own hands rather than just sit here with a target on my back?
mm-hmm.
Because this could happen any day. And
Yeah,
I was 37 at that point, considered old in the industry, because it's all about bringing in the young 20-year-olds and just churning through them without a care.
ambitious and long hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. So I quit, and we sold everything, pretty much everything that we owned. We gave the keys back to our house to the landlord. Said we're done. We're gone.
Yeah.
So we took the kids out of school. We had 4 kids, aged 8, 6, and 3-year-old twins, and we started to travel. And then all of a sudden, the education, that burden was on us.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a case of just get them out the door at 7:30 a.m. in the morning and into the clutches of the education system. And when I saw the difference that made to everybody, it's very difficult to begin with, but then over time, you see the difference it makes to everybody and the way that different people learn in different ways. Even your own kids, even my own twins.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd learn the same, right? No,
No, no, no.
completely different. So that took me down a very, very deep rabbit hole of, the education system, how we learn, why we learn, and then I found mentors to follow in their footsteps. Whether that would be Sir Ken Robinson, his TED talks are amazing.
Yeah. Rest in
John,
peace.
yes, rest in peace. And for your listeners, I do have an interview with Sir Ken on my podcast if they do want to go back and check that out. I
So you
also have an interview. Sorry.
faster than me. I was going to ask you about Sir Ken Robinson interview as well, because it, I'm okay. I went to college and everything, blah blah blah, but I didn't really do it because I wanted to do it, because
Mhm.
the society kind of pushed for it. And I remember listening to the original TED talk by Sir Ken Robinson, and it's like, oh, this is what I'm also thinking. So I think more people should give a listen to it, and also like your interview with him is amazing as well.
That TED talk that you're referencing is called "Do Schools Kill
Great.
Creativity?" and it was released in 2006, and it's still the most downloaded and watched TED talk of all time.
I think it's
Um,
one of the speeches that made TED,
yeah,
like really popularized it. So
he absolutely nailed it. And yeah, kudos to Sir Ken for opening my wife and my own eyes to just questioning. Just
yeah,
that's all you got to do. First of all, you just got to question it. Like, what is it for? The education system, and then other brilliant authors. Peter Gray, he wrote the book Free to Learn, has also been on the podcast. So listeners to this can go and find that episode.
I'll
Uh,
put the links to those episodes as well. So if people want to listen, they can have easy access to it. They don't have to
Brilliant.
search through it. Yeah.
John Taylor Gatto, another rest in peace, unfortunately. John Holt was very prominent back in the 70s and 80s,
Mhm.
talking about exposing the education system, in fact, and talking about how important it is to let your children find their own passions in life and learn at their own speed,
Mhm.
rather than be forced into a classroom of 29 other kids that they probably don't even like,
Yeah.
uh, and sit down and learn straight for 7 hours a day, in the most ridiculous of settings. Sat down, straight back, all dressed the same. Generally, especially in the UK now, I don't know what it's like in Turkey, but
Oh, here
everybody's
we have uniforms as well.
right. It's so communist. It's ridiculous.
I mean, one of the, what's one of the craziest things for me is like, you have to choose a school. You cannot choose your teachers or whatever. Like, you go to a
Mhm.
school, and the school assigns you teachers or your kid teachers. And yeah, like it's just in life, at least in most of the things, you have the illusion that you can make choices. In this one, you don't even have that. It's crazy.
There's no choice. It's called John Taylor Gatto refers to it as forced schooling,
Mhm.
because it's it's so um, insidious the way that it's been really brought about since like the late 1890s. That this idea that the only way that you're going to achieve anything in life is
Mhm.
if you go through this linear process
Mhm.
of walking through your nearest school's doors. Generally, this is what happens. Generally, it's just the nearest one. We can get into private schooling and all of that a little bit later. But generally, it's the nearest. What's the nearest school? And if you back up one more, when you're having kids, you have all of this pressure on you as a parent
Mm.
to start looking into moving to a new house. One, because you might need a little bit of extra room, but
Yeah.
two, because you want to be near the best school.
True. That's actually true. For example, for my elementary school, I we had to show that I was living in my grandmother's house because it was a little bit
Right.
closer than ours, and I would be in that certain public school.
Yeah, it's referenced as the sphere of influence in the UK. So somebody literally draws a circle around that catchment area, and if your home falls within inside that arbitrarily drawn circle, then your child is able to go to that school. So anything just outside of that circle either has a higher or lower price depending on how good that school is, right? So now you're just messing around with real estate prices.
Hmm.
on the back of
The
state
second
education.
order of effects are usually like so under considered, but there's
It,
a definitely there is one here.
it's completely it's complete nuts.
Yeah.
And so what we get fooled into believing is, you have to go to school to be able to socialize.
Hmm.
That's the first thing homeschoolers get accused of.
Yeah.
You're not allowing your children to socialize. How will they ever socialize? So again, they're getting mixed up with the definition of the word socialize.
It's like they get the 10-minute breaks and it's socializing in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. So what's actually happening, that is forced association. It's not socializing.
Hmm.
Forced association with people you may or may not even want to spend any time with at
Yeah.
all. You have no choice. That the first day that you turn up, you are segregated by age and mainly, maybe even by alphabetical order. If there
Hmm.
are too many kids, let's say 1,000 kids turn up the same age, they've got
Hmm.
to be split up into several different classes. That
Hmm.
might just be done alphabetically.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't socialization.
No.
Like, not the way we understand
I
the
mean, can
word.
you imagine parents being forced to stay in the same room with their kids' classmates' parents for like 2 weeks or whatever? Like,
Nope.
yeah.
Doesn't it's complete nonsense. So what's happening is, there is no socialization going on that, we think in that definition of the word. What's going on is kids are being socialized.
Hmm.
They're being socialized to act or perform in a certain way, in
Hmm.
an outcome that is, beneficial to those people that are causing this forced association, that are imposing this forced association. So that's what's going on at school. There is, socialization to act in accordance to a way that the people imposing that education on you want you to behave.
I'll tell you something really funny. So, for example, the one of the ministers of education in Turkey literally said, "I don't like educated people." It's like, yeah. So,
And these ministers of education, because we have the same all over the world, many of them have never worked in education,
hmm,
ever.
yeah.
They are just a career politician. They're an unelected bureaucrat that is towing the party line. And it just so happens their party are now in power.
Yes.
And the president or the prime minister now has to assign everybody jobs. And if you're as close to them as possible, then you might get one of these
Fancy
ministerial jobs.
titles. Yeah.
Yeah. So I tell you what, you be Minister of Education, you be Minister of Health. Doesn't matter that you weigh 350 pounds
Oh, yeah.
and you are completely shockingly overweight and drink and smoke far too much. You're Minister of Health. You
That's
you can be Minister of, like, finance. You took economics at school, right? Okay, fine.
oh, you are good with taking loans from the bank. I'll make you the Ministry of Finance or whatever. Like the health ministers are always the funniest, by the way. Like the Belgium one. And,
Yeah, yes. But it is the same with the education ministers as well, because they've never worked in education.
mhm,
And most likely they went to some very high end, very expensive private
mhm,
school. So they have no idea what an actual state school looks like.
yeah.
And it's just complete nonsense. And they're given a budget as well. Like, they're given this budget out of thin air.
So I did really interrupt you there, but recently I was really sad when I saw that you had an interview with Cole Summers' father.
Mhm.
Yeah, because till I saw that, I didn't know that he passed away, and really that was a sad day for me. And I I got yeah, introduced to Cole Summers thanks to you. And yeah, would you like to talk about him and his path a little?
Yeah, absolutely. I come aware of Cole when he was tweeting about homeschooling, or his version of homeschooling, which was very much unschooling,
Hmm.
not particularly learn anything from any book, but just learn how to do things when he needed to solve a problem. And
Hmm.
he needed to solve a problem that his father was badly disabled, and the money that they were given by the military, because he was a ex-military man, was not enough to cover their expenses. So at the age of 8, he started a business. He started a rabbit breeding business. This is an 8-year-old kid
Yeah.
who had figured out at that point that going to school just seemed like complete and utter nonsense, and he did not have any interest in hanging around with the types of kids that went there. And his father and his mother, in fact, had already come to that conclusion when he was a little kid.
Hmm.
So, thankfully for them, Cole, we'll use his pseudonym. Cole just went along with that and thrived under the stewardship of mum and dad, and getting out there and figuring out his own way. And by the age of 10, he'd bought his own home. And by the age of 11, he had completely redesigned the home, and was working on various other projects. He'd bought 350 acres of land, which he was going to rewild because it had gone completely desolate. And he was working on just these incredible projects and figuring out how to do it all himself along the way, how to create a business, how to launch a business, how to get the proper documents in places, how to account, how to pay your taxes. All of this was done primarily on his own, with the help of mum and dad when they
Hmm.
needed to put the tools in front of him, or if he needed a lift to the bank,
Oh
like
yeah, he needed the signature, and he
yeah,
wasn't authorized to sign a paper. Yeah.
absolutely. And tragically, we saw a tweet on Twitter come out that he'd passed away. I had already DM'd with Cole a few times, and we'd set a date at some point to do a podcast together. So his father found those DMs and reached out to me, and then said he'd like to sit in for Cole and get his message out to as many people as possible. So that was a very special moment. There's an extra 1 to 2,000 people now in the Bitcoin community that have listened to his father's story and his father's take on how to bring up kids, what homeschooling or unschooling might look like, why you always need to question anything that you're just told to do. And go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, one of the crazy things is that, like, as a young business person, he even went through the lockdown issues in during the corona. Like, he
Yep.
had to restart the rabbit business because the restaurants were closed.
Hmm.
Yeah, he survived through all that, and he, yeah, flourished the business. It's crazy.
This is such a common story within alternative education groups, and I've met God knows how many, so many world schooling families as well that did the same as us, because we fell into that kind of niche where we were homeschooling whilst on the road. So yeah, you call it world schooling because we were visiting different countries. So what might that look like? Each different day is completely different. You don't need to be pulling out textbooks. You can if you want. If you want to layer on a little bit of academic stuff, let's get some math going. That's what we were doing. We were just using Kumon books at the time, I remember, because they were nice and light, and
Come on.
yeah, Kumon.
Okay.
They were nice and light, and it was just something for the kids to sit down and practice, like mental arithmetic.
Mhm.
But otherwise, each day was completely different. Every other week, we were in a completely different location, whether that was a different location within the same country or just a different country altogether. So we would just wake up and make the most of what each day brought to us and what our surroundings could bring to us. And whether that's walking down to the beach, or walking to a local city park, or walking to a free museum, or walking to an ice rink, or we did all of this stuff, or driving to a coastal pathway and doing a hike, having a picnic, going to local farms just to learn about their practices, and watching the farmer milk the cows, and then having a lesson how to do it ourselves, like all of
Actually,
it.
living a life.
Yes,
Yeah.
hands-on education, when it's right in front of your nose, rather than in a textbook, in a classroom, listening to, being taught the exact same thing
Yeah.
as everybody else.
Yeah.
If we know anything about human action, or building a team, or building a business, anything at all, what do you want? You want a diversified team with a
But
diversified skill set.
actually diversified, not like diversified because they are from different ethnic groups and raised by the same system.
Hmm.
Actually, people that try to solve different problems with different tools.
And excel in different areas for whatever reason, just because that comes naturally to them.
Yeah.
But if we beat that out of everybody, we sit everybody down and beat them with the same message, and you've got to sing from the same song sheet. Like history is a classic example. Like the way we're taught history is so nationalistic in every different state education. But that's what that whole cohort of kids are going to grow up believing happened.
Yeah, we are taught our enemies. Like these are your enemies. These we had conflicts with. It's for me. People are people. They are individuals. Like for example, like there's the Greek islands somewhere over there. Greek people and Turkish people are culturally so similar, and they really get along well without the politics or history involved. So
Yep. But
it's
my final message, I guess, I suppose, because I've just seen the time. I don't know how much longer you need to count down. But I just want people to understand that in most cases, in most countries, there is a choice for you, and you've just got to start looking at that choice. State education might not be for your child, and if it isn't, forcing them into that toxic environment every day for 15 years is going to cause a lot of trauma. And you're probably carrying a lot of trauma yourselves, because we all went through it. And that is to take a kid away from the family at the age of 5. Here in France, it's 3. It's so aggressive. It's so damn aggressive.
it's
And
going
there's no
lower
need for
and
it.
lower
Yeah.
because both parts, like both the parents need to start working to support the family, and yeah, they need a classified babysitter. So schooling age is going lower, and
Yep. And it's a real, that's a death spiral. That is the death of the family.
mhm, yeah, crazy. Like if you think about it, you have so many stories with your kids, and the more they spend time in school, the more stories, the less stories you have. So they
You
look
have
for
you
solutions. Like
you have one story. You have the
yeah,
same story as everybody else,
true,
with
mainly.
slight difference. Maybe you got an A and they got a B.
Yeah, yeah,
I like that, and that's what people hinge their lives on. It's such nonsense, and it's so arbitrary as well, because you know full well that A and that B could have been marked by the same teacher,
yeah.
just on a different night, when they weren't particularly paying attention, or they were in a completely different mood. There's no, any form of grading a human is degrading.
So I have to tell this story. We had a national security teacher in our high school,
Hmm.
and none of us really thought he was actually reading the papers. And he would be like, "Okay, Daniel, I like you. I'll give you a 95%. Or
Right.
Şükrü, I like you. I'll give you this." Like he would say the same thing to everyone. I like you. I bumped up your grade. Except there was this one kid. It's like, "Oh, I don't like you. I just gave you a failing grade." He literally did this. It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
And you've given up
yeah,
15 years of your life to that system.
yeah. Oh well. Yeah.
So
Also, find
please,
one more thing. I think that's also important. Like, okay, this program is mainly about Bitcoin. The reason why I think homeschooling and Bitcoin kind of goes along is because of the sovereignty.
mhm,
Like, would you like to also give a
yes,
couple of?
yes, there's this is exactly what I've seen as well. Because I came to Bitcoin later than I found homeschooling. The feeling I found from homeschooling was a sense of responsibility, self sovereignty. Um, we separated education from state.
Yes.
It was only natural, therefore, I believe, that I was going to find Bitcoin because
Hmm.
Bitcoin separates money from state. And that gives you back the power over your own finances and over your own decisions and over your own future. The same with education. You take the power away from the state of force feeding your kids what they believe that they should be knowing and be applying to the rest of their lives. You take that power away, and you take the power. And the, we've been called many times irresponsible parents because we homeschool, and this is another thing that happens to anybody that does this. Anybody that makes this decision to take their child out of the education system, you get called an irresponsible parent.
Yeah.
Whereas the absolute opposite is true. What you're doing is taking full responsibility now. Like it's on you now.
Yeah.
If you have made that decision, that's scary. And that will keep a lot of people in the education system because they don't want to take on the responsibility
Mhm.
because they've been brought up themselves through the education system where responsibility is
Yeah.
always farmed out to the state. You take on responsibility. You have total ownership now over the education of your kid. That is too scary for most people, but it's so freeing. And when you understand from a deep level, like the unbelievable opportunity that that's going to offer your kids in 15 to 20
Mhm.
years time, when they can think critically, when they can actually socialize with anybody of any age, of any color, of any creed, of any religion, because they haven't been just boxed in with the same looking people for the last 15 years. You
Even with kids who their surnames are farther away in the alphabetical order.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Even with those kids, they could socialize with those kids. Taking on responsibility and self sovereignty is something we've got to recapture. And this is something that Bitcoin, when you start studying Bitcoin, that you realize we have completely lost. And it's something so damn important that we need to regain. It becomes addictive when
Hmm.
you realize, oh shit, I am actually in control.
Yeah.
And you don't ever want to go back.
Yeah, and you actually become more hopeful because you have so much more alternatives and new routes ahead of you because you know that you are not supposed to go on a single line and you can just go around, have new paths, come back, go the other way. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, most people are happy. They think they're happy in the fact that maybe they'll get to retire between 70 and 75. You know, that's always a moving target.
Yeah, yeah,
If they just do what they're doing and keep their head down and keep saving that little bit that they're able to save come the end of the month, even though prices keep going up and
yeah.
everything that they ever need, uh, they think they're going to make it. It's very scary to step away from that. And
Mhm.
what people don't, and when you're right, when you give yourself that agency over your future, and you don't know where you're going to be next year,
Yeah.
that's truly exciting rather than something to be afraid of because you're
It,
not going to end up bankrupt and living under a bridge. I guarantee
it's
you.
like being a hunter and gatherer, you know that you'll survive. Sometimes it will take you longer to find food, but you'll be okay. With the
Yep.
other plant, yeah, planting and waiting for the harvest, you never know actually, because if something catastrophic happens, then the whole system collapses. So it's a similar mindset for me.
And most people look at entrepreneurs as risk takers,
Hmm.
as these unicorns, these people. They're amazing. I can't believe, what gives them the bravery. Like, no, that's actually your default setting to
Yes.
be an entrepreneur, to be someone who just has to figure everything out day to day and figure out a way to add value, leverage your skills and your natural talents, layer on top of them, learn from the people around you who are better at certain skill or talent than you are, and
Yeah.
you'll just be fine. You
Yeah.
will just be fine.
I mean,
Like, if you look at here's the history, like the timeline of human history, right?
yeah.
Here, just there, right there, is state education
Uh-huh.
experiment. Everything before that, we were all good.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how did we get here?
Right. We make it to the point where we could even have the luxury to test the state education.
I should have. If anybody wants to learn more about how we did it, I should shill my book. There's my book there.
Yes.
Choose Life. It's not a self-help, happy clappy guru guide. It's not. It's not even a blueprint of how to escape the rat race. It's just an account of how my wife and I did it, the thoughts that were going through my head. It's all there, like, because there were a lot of sleepless nights running up to making these decisions. Quit your job, take your kids out of school. It sounds like crazy, crazy shit. So I am somebody that's done it. There's a toolkit in there, loads of links to other people that have done it, which I hope, if anybody's interested in. There's so much more information out there now on the internet. There are different online self-directed education platforms that you can plug into. The one we use is Kubrio. That's Kubrio. Kubrio.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got 3 of my kids on that, and that's how they actually socialize, albeit on Zoom. It's not in the physical realm. We do the physical stuff ourselves.
I'll go back to Cole. One sentence he said was really like striking for me. He's like, "Well, my tractor gets broken. I take it to the person who repairs the tractor, and he's my friend. I don't need to socialize with people that are always my age." It's
Yes, exactly. And that's what we do with our kids as well. Our friends are their friends.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's one thing. That's one thing all of our adult friends say about our kids. Like, how is it I can speak to your kids but nobody else's?
Yeah.
It's like, because they're homeschooled. They're outside of the state education system. If you're in the state education system, the adult in the room is the authoritar. That's it. And they're scared of them. And they're to be seen, not heard.
Mhm.
But our kids don't think that way. The adult in the room is their friend as well, and they're just as curious to learn from somebody else or share stories with them as they are with kids of their own age or with younger.
Actually, they may even get better stories out of people because they are not worried about asking questions to them. Like even me and a random person that's my age, I would be like, "Oh, is it socially awkward to ask about this?" But they won't be like that.
The
It's totally,
programming is deep,
yeah.
and that's a very good thing. A very good point about questions. You're taught in school that asking questions is a weakness.
Hmm.
It's inferred at the very least, but it's also don't interrupt the class because I'm trying to explain to everyone. And if you don't get it, little Johnny, put your hand down because everybody else around you is getting it. Whereas everybody else around them is not getting it. They're just too afraid to raise their hands to show weakness.
Hmm.
Whereas if you flip that on its head, we know in the Bitcoin space, asking questions is a strength.
Yes.
Keep asking that question until you find the right person that can relay it to you in the best possible manner. This is why Michael Saylor is so important to Bitcoin education. He comes along. We're all talking about the same thing, but he just is expressing it in a different way, and that is resonating with so many different people on a different level. So keep asking questions. That is a weakness. Excuse me, that is a strength, not a weakness.
So perfect. Thanks for being here, and it's always amazing to speak to you. And hopefully we'll see each other around again.
Thank you, brother.
Daniel ile gerçekleştirdiğimiz bu bölümün sonuna geldik. Bölümü Satoshi Radyo üzerinden podcast olarak ve YouTube üzerinden Satoshi TV'de izleyebilirsiniz. Lütfen kanalı takip etmeyi ve bildirimleri açmayı unutmayın. Önümüzdeki bölümlerde görüşmek üzere.